Welcome to the World of Eora, a news and lore podcast about Pillars of Eternity and Avowed. I'm your host, Eric, aka Gingerino. Thank you so much for joining me as we dive into the history, lore, and game mechanics for the worlds that Obsidian has created for us. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the World of Eora. I am your host Eric, aka Gingerino. Thanks everyone for joining me on another episode as we dive into the history, lore, and game mechanics of Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2 and Avowed. For anybody who finds themselves here wondering why we're pairing all those games together, it's because they share the same fantasy setting known as Eora. And so as the theory goes, if we can dive into these games to just understand the world a little bit better, appreciate the writing and the nuance of the world, we can use it for our own roleplay or tabletop games or just nerd out about a fantasy world that we know and love, and perhaps it might inspire a new playthrough of the games or help illuminate something about the world that you didn't understand before. If you're new to the show, welcome to the show. Very happy to have you here. I heavily encourage you to email worldofeora@gmail.com with any questions, comments, concerns, or you just want to reach out and chat about nerdy stuff. I love, first and foremost, having conversations with people who are into the same thing. So please do that. I genuinely appreciate it. Today is also going to be a good episode to start off with if you're new. We're going to be diving into the Avowed 2.0 release. However, we're also going to be diving into a lot of lore from the Pillars of Eternity era, because the quaterstaves in particular, quarterstaffs, I'm not really, I think I asked someone on Reddit which is proper, and it turns out they're both proper and fine. But regardless, quaterstaves in Avowed having magical properties is kind of an interesting question for me, because they were not typically magical weapons in Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2. And so with the introduction of quarterstaves being able to be used as magical implements, it made me ask the question, what actually creates a magical implement? Like, what is the actual mechanic for why a wand is a wand, and how is it able to actually channel the energy through it? I got a couple of ideas, but more than anything else, we're just going to kind of dive into the history of magic in this world and how it may or may not work. It'll be a little bit of theory crafting, a fun episode to do and be on, and so hope you enjoy it. Today will be a good episode for a new one. But first, let's dive into the news for today. The big piece of news is obviously that the 2.0 anniversary update for Avowed is out, and so there is a slew of new things that are here for Avowed 2.0. Which is not Avowed 2, I guess I should say, it's Update 2.0. But here we are, Avowed has got its latest anniversary update out, and with it has things like New Game Plus, so you can start a brand new game over, carrying over a lot of the things you had from before, although there are going to be some things that are different. There are new playable races and new options within character creation. You can also actually change your character and the way they look partway through the game. You just go to the party camp and you can alter the character's appearance. There is custom difficulty options so that you can adjust kind of things that you want in terms of the challenge for the game, make it easier or harder in different areas. There is photo mode. For those of you who love taking interesting pictures, I've already seen some really interesting ones online, including one taken from the perspective of a Zorup's mouth before it tries to eat you. A new weapon type, which I'll be talking about a lot in today's episode, called the quarterstaff, which is what it kind of sounds like. It's a long bonking stick, but this time it's got some magic in it. There are respawning encounters as well, which has been kind of a contentious topic within the Reddit community that I've mostly been perusing. A lot of people didn't like that change, which is interesting because there was a number of people that are actually asking for it, and that might even be why this was implemented in the 2.0 update. I really do like the idea of having respawning encounters, although now that I've read a lot of things online, I can see why some people might not like that. So I understand the kind of blight there. A lot of people have been hoping for a toggle switch to turn off respawning encounters. I'm a little suspicious at how easy people think it might be, but if it is an option, I hope it's something Obsidian can implement, whether or not you want to have respawning encounters in a new game mode or something like that. I like it because then I can go, if I decide I want to try a new build, I don't have to just do it at the garden before the point of no return save hits. I can go back to other areas and try out a new build on something else. So I personally like it, but I understand the feeling of, I cleared this area before, why are these enemies back? I just want to be able to run through. And there is a kind of finality and a sense of accomplishment to that when you're running through the forests of Emerald Stair region and not a single enemy is in sight because you've just dominated the area. There is something satisfying about that. That is lost with respawns, and that's not something I had considered before personally, and I'm still would rather have the respawns, but that's just me. As well, there have been other quality of life improvements. And the last thing with the Avowed update is that the platform expansion from Avowed being Xbox and PC only to being on PlayStation 5. So now those of you who are playing on Sony's platform, you can play Avowed. And I'm hopeful, as well as a number of other people are hopeful, that perhaps the sales of Avowed on PlayStation 5 could potentially raise the sales number and margin for Avowed, that maybe it hits those targets that Microsoft was hoping for, and that green lights Avowed to be able to get some different things down the road, or perhaps a bigger sequel. There isn't a plan, as far as I understand it, from Obsidian to abandon Avowed or Eora in any way, but clearly the vision that they had and how they implemented it in the development didn't hit the targets they wanted. So they are going to have to pivot and change how they do their development process in the future. But yeah, those are everything that comes with it. I'll try to dive in a little bit more detail. New Game Plus allows you to restart the game, just like any other New Game Plus, carrying over certain ability points and unique gear. All your regular gear will be gotten rid of, including all the money that you have. So, pro tip, because I kind of learned this, I wanted to start New Game Plus as a wizard-type character, and I didn't change those statistics before I finished the game on my original file. So then when I got my New Game Plus mode out, I didn't have enough gold to respec my character. I was kind of just stuck with a lot of the things I had before. That being said, you do get a lot of these ability points back and you can use them, and they work just fine. It's just, if you want to have a little more of a seamless thing, for me anyways, I had to respec before the final battle and then do it, and then it would carry over into the New Game Plus mode. And the attribute caps as well as the level caps basically double, and we have new playable races. Instead of just being a human or an elf, you can play as a dwarf or an Orlin or an Amauan. Technically you're a godlike every time, but you can have kind of a different physiology behind your godlike persona. Unfortunately, they do not have any background or dialogue options, but they do come with unique stat bonuses as well. And backgrounds now also add additional boosts, apparently. That's a detail that I wasn't paying attention to when I started my New Game Plus, so I am going to be starting a New Game Plus right away to actually play through it rather than just goof around. So I'll let you know if anything from there. And lastly, we're just the custom difficulty options. I'm not going to dive into every single one. That would not be the purpose of the show, but definitely if you have something you're interested in, go ahead and check it out. With that all being said, we can dive into the lore right away. I'll give my quick first impression here of the anniversary update. As someone who is very much looking forward to it, I have to say I am quite enjoying it. It's been nice to get back into Avowed. I do have to go through that, early 1 hour slog of doing all the things that I have done 100 times from characters that I abandoned. But outside of that, it's really interesting to have all of your gear right at the offset, to just jump right into a character with the gear that you wanted to have from the very beginning and play around with it and really master something like that. I can see some of it getting a little samey after a while, where, I'm going to start a New Game Plus as an Ice Mage, and so I have my Ice Mage build, and I'm basically going to only play that from beginning to end. I suppose if the enemies are a significant enough challenge, then that might feel novel for quite a while. But I can definitely see why it would be good to have, different forms of gear released over the course of a new game. But this isn't a new blind playthrough. This is a New Game Plus. I know all the tricks and I know all the secrets, and I can respec whenever I want. And so I think ultimately it won't be a big deal. I've been enjoying it. I don't feel the drive to play nearly as much as I thought I would. I got into New Game Plus mode and I got through that early segment, and I didn't really feel, the next night, I gotta play Avowed again, I can't wait to play it. I kind of wanted to just do some of my tabletop writing or something else, but that might just be a reflection of myself more than anything, because a lot of people are jumping on this game, some of you for the first time, and you're very much enjoying it. So yeah, personally, I like it. Couple gripes here and there, but nothing that is honestly a make or break deal. So that's my opinion. We'll dive into it, I guess, a little bit when I talk about quarterstaves for the most of this episode. So let's dive into the lore.
Half the locals would arrest you for trespassing and the rest would kill you outright. I'm curious. What exactly did you find there?
So the majority of what I'm going to talk about today is quarterstaves in Avowed and how they compare to wands, scepters, and rods from Pillars of Eternity. And a lot of the lore that we're focusing on today is how we wield magic within the World of Eora, which is a topic I have technically beaten to death, but we will be talking about it in a little bit different of an approach on today's episode. As a quick overview, for those of you who might be newer or just need a reminder on how magic works, there is this stuff in the World of Eora called essence. It's the primary thing that your soul is made of in this world, but it does exist in the ambient environment around you, in trees, rocks, and dirt, etc., etc. Essence is everywhere, but it is the stuff that souls are made of, and that's what makes it unique and special. And magic in the World of Eora is always some form of manipulation or wielding of essence in some way, shape, or form. Wizards use grimoire books as an in-between to grab essence from the world and form it into what we would call a spell, and then they fling that spell. So really, wizards are just kind of like baseball players, except the baseball is a spell that has been kind of shaped out of essence. People like chanters, they are able to revive the memories because memories and consciousness and personality exist within essence. The chanter is able to stir the collective memory in essence that is around them, and that memory kind of forms into a spell within the world around them. And so it is this interaction with essence in some way, shape, or form that creates magic and magical abilities and magical outcomes. And so when we're dealing with things like wands and scepters and rods, and now quarterstaves within the world, I ask the question myself of what is actually happening on a mechanical level with these items, right? There isn't something new about items in the World of Eora having essence within them. In fact, a lot of the lore that I talk about on this channel, or I guess not channel, but on this show, is entirely about essence that has suffused into items that have the memory of the person who used to wield them. And as a result, it also has some sort of empowerment or enhancement to it that makes it a little bit more magical. And so the idea that, an item could be infused with essence energy and therefore have a magical property to it, like slinging out a spell, for example, is not unheard of. But wands and rods and scepters and now quarterstaves are relatively universal in how they are used. A wand is this little short stick that you can swing, you can whip with your wrist, and not a spell, but a little blast comes out of it. And it's very consistent across all sorts of wands. Now, perhaps that's just the way the video games represent them for the sake of consistency and all that. Maybe within the logic and lore of this world, maybe each blast might be a little bit unique and different. But the question I have is what's actually happening inside the wand that makes it happen? When you go to other fantasy worlds, there's some sort of magical core. Obviously, I think a lot of people think of Harry Potter in that state of what's the thing that's inside the wand that gives it its magical properties. But in other fantasy media, it's kind of the same thing. There's this very special wood that's the wand is made of, or it has a core ingredient that is a focus for the magic, and that's why it's able to blast out a little almost like magic missile thing, or it's used as a focus by a wizard, and the wizard is actually the source of magic, but the wand is some sort of conductive focus that makes it move forward. In Eora, I don't know that there has actually been a codified answer to this. I've been trying to do some research, and without completely replaying the entire game or combing through hours and hours of videos, I'm not actually sure off the top of my head what is fueling it. We have some hints in item descriptions, and we're going to go through that, but I don't know that I have a definitive answer. But we're going to chew through it, and maybe we can get to something that is close enough to definitive, and maybe someone from Obsidian, if you're listening, wouldn't mind emailing me, worldofeora@gmail.com. Let me know if there is an answer that I am either missing or is just over at Obsidian. So in this first example, I'm going to read the item description for wands from the Pillars of Eternity games, and this is consistent from Pillars of Eternity 1 to Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. When you have a wand, if you go into your inventory and you read the item description, it reads, as magical implements often lack serious power compared to bows, crossbows, and firearms, the wand's flexible damage helps wizards deal heavily armored opponents more easily. Wands are easily distinguished from scepters by their tapered points. In Deadfire, if you read the same descriptions, it just reads, wands are the smallest of the magical implements and are usually made from wood or bone. While not as innately powerful as scepters or rods, they can hurl bolts of arcane energy more quickly. And I think there's an important distinction between those two definitions that give us a little bit more of an idea. In the first description, they say they lack serious firepower compared to bows, crossbows, and firearms, but they have flexible damage types that help deal with heavily armored opponents. That is just lore writing for the gamified stuff about the wand. So less power than bows, crossbows, and firearms. That just means it doesn't have as high of a damage output per, wand swing. So it lacks the same damage that those other weapons would have. It also deals with heavily armored opponents. That is to say that its damage type is actually, I believe if I remember correctly, it delivers piercing and crushing damage. So it actually has an element of piercing damage to it, which in the game of Pillars of Eternity matters because that affects certain types of defenses that different people can have. Whereas when we read about the wands from the Deadfire description, we read that they're the smallest of the magical implements, which makes sense. They're held in one hand. It's basically like a short stick with a tapered end on it, made from wood or bone, not as powerful as scepters or rods, which are the other magical implements that we normally see from Pillars of Eternity. But they can hurl bolts of arcane energy more quickly. And I think that's kind of the key thing here when we start asking the question of what is actually going on mechanically inside of these wands. Like if you were to do a scientific analysis in this world, what would be the thing that's actually going on? And it seems like they hurl bolts of arcane energy. Arcane energy is essentially essence energy, right? Because everything magical in this world is through essence. So they're hurling bolts of essence energy more quickly. That doesn't really answer the question of what is the essence. Like are all these wands infused with essence? Is that where wands come from? Is only wizards making them? Are they being mass produced in a factory somewhere? Like, what is the process that which a wand is made? And why are there so many wands everywhere? Do the people that have wands in Pillars of Eternity, have they made them themselves? Were they passed down by people before? Because if you didn't remove any wands out of your inventory or sell them, and you just played the entire game from front to back, I'm willing to bet you would have hundreds and hundreds of wands in your inventory, which means that they are plentiful to go around. So this magic is relatively accessible. Granted, you got to suspend your belief a little bit for the sake of the fact that it's a video game, but it's still like it displays to a degree that wands are decently accessible. Like people can get their hands on a wand. A person who has no prior magical experience can get their hands on a wand through, a weapons seller. And so what is actually happening here? Where are they getting their supply of wands from? Who is actually imbuing it with the power? Or is the wand simply taking essence that it's in the ambient environment and using it to do the same function over and over again? So in a sense, the wand is casting a spell, but it's only one spell, and you can do it forever? And that little detail kind of gives me an idea of what actually is going on with wands and scepters and rods, because these items you can hold on your person and you can essentially use them over and over and over again. You can hold a wand in your hand and you can whip it through the air and it will cast that magical thing at enemies around you, which makes me believe that your essence, the one that's in your body, is actually the battery for the wand itself. And there's something about the wand and its creation that allows the energy from your soul to go through the wand in a conductive way that shapes it into the same spell, if you will, every single time the wand is used, and then it expends that energy in the exact same way every time, which is why it comes out as a little bolt of arcane energy. This is also supported by game mechanics, especially as we see in Avowed, with stamina use. When you think about the stamina that it takes to swing a sword and how it depletes your stamina, that kind of makes sense when you're playing Avowed. Then you have this little tiny stick that you kind of wiggle in your hand a little bit, and you have not as much as swinging a sword, but a decent amount of stamina that still goes down. And when you think about that from a physiological point of view, it's like, that doesn't really make sense. Like, it just shouldn't take a lot of stamina to wiggle this little magic stick all over the place. But if you start to think of it as the wand is literally draining the energy that your soul produces, then perhaps that actually has a toll on your physical body as well. To get a little bit more insight into how these magical implements work, we're going to look at rods from Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire. Their item description reads, rods are the largest of magical implements and can be distinguished from wands and scepters by the heads on each end. Rods focus and release more soul energy than wands or scepters. This attribute makes their blows more powerful, but they recharge and fire more slowly. So this really supports kind of like the theory that we can craft from just reading these item descriptions. Rods focus and release more soul energy than wands or scepters. That's just a gamified way of saying that it hits harder than the other two magical implements. It's a two-handed weapon, but it releases far more damage per shot than the other magical implements do. And that is emphasized in the lore by saying they focus and release more soul energy. And that soul energy is likely coming from you, the wielder. And so there's something about your soul that is empowering these magical implements to do what they do. Now, the question I have at this point is, what is really going on in terms of your soul powering these things? Is there literally a little tiny piece of your soul being shaved off and transferred into these rods, and that is what's empowering it? Or is it that essence, and therefore the soul, radiates energy, almost like the way your body radiates energy through heat? It doesn't mean that you're literally, if you're doing something with the heat of your body, I don't know, like trying to warm something up that's cold, it's not that you're literally shaving off physical parts of your body. It's just a property of your physical body to radiate this heat. But your body's heat doesn't just come out of nowhere. You have to energize your body with food and taking care of it and whatnot to be able to radiate heat. And perhaps something like that exists within the world of Eora as well. Perhaps essence can simply radiate energy that these wands and rods and scepters can be receptive to, and then channel that energy out in however they're designed and made, which is something that I don't really know the answer to, of how these implements are made in the first place. Is there a little vein of Adra that's inside of them that allows them to do this? Is there a vein of copper? Is it just that someone who is very experienced in animancy or spellcraft is able to create something that is just receptive to essence in the first place? My biggest theory is that there must be some sort of conductive material in there to essence, like copper or Adra, which, like I just said, is very conductive to essence within this world. And so that's kind of my prevailing idea, is that your soul radiates an energy that these magical implements are sensitive enough to, and they can conduct, that they can then capture this energy and then release it in a certain way. This wouldn't be unlike real world items that can capture heat and use that heat for something. Obviously, maybe not as something as sensitive to where our bodies can heat an item and then we can use that. But this is a magic world, and so it works a little easier here through, magic in cue sparkle sounds if I had any on me. That's kind of the idea that I have going on here. And so this really answers the question I had when playing Avowed, seeing quarterstaves used as magical implements for the first time. Because in Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, quarterstaves are not magical implements, unless they were specifically infused with essence to have a magical effect. They were otherwise just bonking sticks, something that someone carried to hit things with. They were physical and mundane weapons. They weren't magical implements. And then as I was playing Avowed and getting these unique items in the form of unique quarterstaves, which I'm going to talk about in a second, they had this magical effect. If you were able to stun lock an enemy and then hit them with the special ability, they would essentially launch a magical attack at them. And this made me ask the question of, how are they doing that? Like, these quarterstaves were never magical implements in the first game, so what about them in Avowed is making them have magic to it? And it made me ask questions like, can anything be a magical implement in this way? Could, again, outside of unique crafting of items where they are specifically infused with something unique and powerful, like a very powerful memory or emotion from a previous wielder, and that's usually what we see in unique items. Is there a way that quarterstaves, because this also happens, by the way, with, I think, regular quarterstaves, if I remember correctly. I actually haven't tested that, so I should go test that right away. But as far as I know, a regular quarterstaff, its stun lock ability is the same kind of idea. And so the question I had is like, well, can we do this with any weapon type? Can we make any weapon magically gifted in that sense, where it can suddenly channel magic in a non-extra special way, where every item has that same quality? And I don't know, it kind of seems to support the idea like we could. The only difference being perhaps that it would be an extra drain upon your person. And because we see in Avowed here that you can't just do this at any point in time. You can't wield a quarterstaff, bonk a guy on the head, and then flip the tail end of the quarterstaff up to hit them with an ice blast. It's only when you have enough time, when the enemy is stun locked, that you can actually almost channel the energy through your quarterstaff. And so maybe there's some sort of physical limitation that allows certain items to actually be channeled, like a wand and a scepter and a rod can. Maybe a quarterstaff is able to do so because it is very close to a rod, and so it has maybe the physical properties where you can do it, but it's a little more difficult, which is why you can only do it if you have the time to channel the energy, like when an enemy is stun-locked. This would then make it seem probable and realistic that things like swords or other larger weapons, or maybe even just more complicated weapons that have a more complex structure to them, like daggers even, wouldn't be able to do the same thing, where every dagger is able to like hit it, have a quick little shock or a jolt before it hits an enemy, because perhaps there's something about the crafting and creation of those weapons that don't allow for that to happen. Perhaps the quarterstaffs in Avowed are very specific to the living lands. Maybe there is an abundance of wood in the living lands that is also very essence infused, or perhaps they'll have little small microscopic pieces of Audra in them. I'm just theory crafting here on how this could work. So maybe when we play Avowed 2, and if it's set in like Rawatai or something, maybe we won't see quarterstaffs having the same level of this kind of thing. Or I don't know, maybe we will. And so these were the questions I was asking, is how is the quarterstaff being turned into a regular magical weapon like these other ones, and does it open up the idea that other items could as well? I'm able to formulate a theory where, like I just put forward to you, how quarterstaves could have these magical potentials to them, but other items wouldn't. But it was still interesting to look at. Now, again, we could say that the quarterstaves in Avowed were made in such a way that they conduct your soul's energy, and so they do have this mundane thing to them where they can still release some magical energy, and that would still allow for other weapons to be able to do the same thing. And in particular, I'm thinking of things along the lines of crossbow bolts. Why wouldn't the average crossbow bolt be able to be infused with a piece of essence that when it launches from a crossbow that you're wielding, that you're able to give it a quick charge that, helps it break through armor barrier? Nothing crazy, like nothing big, like a massive explosion or an arc of lightning, just something small, like a little bit of extra power to give it a speed boost that can happen on every single shot of a crossbow bolt. And like, what if that becomes a very normal piece of weaponry where every single person who has a crossbow can essentially expect that kind of outcome from it? Is that going to be possible? Is that the next level of technology in, militaristic technology anyways, within the world of Eora? Like, are we now seeing this transformation from physical, mundane weapons to now being just automatically infused with a base level of essence to give themselves that little extra kick? Maybe that's the next level of technology within this world. I'm not trying to analyze it too much, because very likely, and the developers pretty much say this through interviews, is that the quarterstaff was made the way they were in Avowed so that you could play this power fantasy of being a very Gandalf-like wizard. And if that's all it turns out to be, and there is no lore explanation and we don't need one, honestly, I'm fine with that. I like doing these theories because it's fun, and at the end of the day, if it ends up clashing with other lore, that's fine. This is a fantasy world. It's not the real world. I can live with that, and I'm just happy to come up with goofy ideas, especially because I like to play these things at tabletop role-playing games, and I'm kind of hopeful that this new table of gamers that I have are actually going to want to do a full campaign in the World of Eora. So I'm excited about that, and I'll talk more about it if it ends up seeing the light of day. So now, before we close out the rest of this episode, let me just very quickly go into some of the lore for the new quarterstaves that we see in Avowed with the 2.0 update release. So in an interview with, I can't remember the platform, but Gabe Parama, one of the lead directors of the game of Avowed at this point, especially since Carrie Patel has stepped out of Obsidian, he mentioned that there was 4 or 5 unique quarterstaves in the 2.0 release. And up until literally today when I'm recording this, the community at large only knew of 3. We have now found the 4th one. There is potentially a 5th one, but we're not sure, because he did say there was 4 or 5. And they all seem to be kind of following a very similar motif with every single one. So these unique quarterstaves, very often, obviously they'll have their name, they'll have the same level of, statistics that a regular or quarterstaff would have of their tier, and then they'll usually have some sort of elemental damage to them. And each staff seems to have a correlation to a different element. So currently we have the 4. One is Staff of Pestilence, which is poison-based damage. It is a little bit different in that the other effect that it has is it deals low elemental accumulation of any type that you have already inflicted upon yourself, which kind of matches the idea of poison being an infectious thing, right? So if someone has hit you for a lot of shock damage, and now you have that status effect upon yourself, if I'm understanding this description properly, your Staff of Pestilence will then apply shock damage to other people, right? So it does have that idea of being infectious, like, oh, you have shock accumulation, now you can give shock accumulation to your enemies. And on top of that, it also deals 10% poison damage. So Staff of Pestilence, that's the poison damage staff. It has a little bit different one in that secondary thing, like I said. The other quarterstaves are, let me see if I can remember here, there is the Dread of Winter. This one allows you to cast frost spells as if they were a rank higher, and they also reduce the frost spell cost of essence by 20%, and they also deal 10% frost damage. The other 2 quarterstaves follow the same thing, except for shock damage and fire damage, respectively. We have the, what is it called? The Spark of Inspiration, I believe, and that one is shock damage spell. So shock spells cast 1 rank higher, they're 20% easier to cast, they deal 10% more shock damage. And then there is the recently discovered quarterstaff of the Cindered Branch, which a lot of us thought was in Galawain's Tusk, myself included. Turns out it was actually another one within Shatterscarp. So that's a second quarterstaff we can find in Shatterscarp. This one does a similar thing as before. Fire spells, rank higher, easier to cast, and also has fire damage. You can upgrade any of these quarterstaves to also release a top tier magical spell that will automatically go off when you unleash a power attack, or maybe a stun attack, I can't remember which one. So like a meteor shower, for example, with the fire staff. You hit a power attack on a stun-locked enemy or what have you, and boom, a meteor shower spell is suddenly invoked. So these staves are actually really powerful and really cool to use. If you pair it with a magical build on a character who also has some proficiency in two-handed weapons, you can be a force to be reckoned with, especially with some of these magical properties that the unique quarterstaves have as well. Now, at the time of this recording, I don't have the Cindered Branch in hand to actually look at the item description to tell you what it says in there. I'm going to load up the game right away, go and get it, see if it's worth reporting back what the item description is on this episode. But for now, I have got my hands on the other 3. I'm not going to read the item descriptions for you in totality with them because that's not really the focus of what the lore is for today's episode. But suffice it to say, just like any other unique item within these 3 games, the item descriptions of unique weapons and armor give you a story of the person beforehand, or the creation of how these things came to be, or some sort of insight into how the world acts and behaves. For example, just as a quick overview, the Staff of Pestilence talks about this wielder that had this regular walking stick. The Staff of Pestilence was just a regular mundane quarterstaff. And then this person fell into a bog and drowned and died there. And this quarterstaff sort of sucked up the essence, if you will, of their master and of the swamp, and that's why it is the unique quarterstaff that we see in the game, and why it's able to do what it does. And that also kind of makes sense with when it absorbs the whatever kind of elemental accumulation that you, the wielder, have, is because that's the story that happens with the Staff of Pestilence. It was in a boggy, poisonous swamp next to its master who owned it, and it was able to soak up that kind of element, and it was cast around to others. So it makes sense it would also do that same thing with a new wielder such as yourself. So perhaps in the next episode I can do a special on these quarterstaffs to talk about the stories behind each one of them, but I also have some other ideas for episodes I've been wanting to go through. If you have any ideas, send me an email, worldofeora@gmail.com, of something you'd like me to talk about. There was a number of topics a number of you have given me throughout time, and if I haven't gotten to one yet, please send me another email to remind me of it. Some of these lists get a little big and maybe I lose track of things, so I always would like those reminders. If I haven't hit a topic yet that you have specifically requested, please let me know, because I do want to make this show for you guys, the listener. But other than that, let us close up today's episode.
If you find your trail has run cold, come to me with whatever you have. There is much I may be able to do for you.
If you liked today's episode, or you didn't, or you just want to talk about how you feel about the 2.0 update, please send me an email, worldofeora@gmail.com. Let me know if you've been playing around with these quarterstaffs and a magic build. It seems like it can get pretty powerful if you mix, say the Cindered Branch fire quarterstaff with the Cruel Command Wand, which is a fire wand, and then you have the Grimoire of Embers, which is a book full of fire-based magic. It seems like it could be pretty powerful, especially since you don't need to invest ability points to max out your magic scores in each one of those spells, since your Grimoire and your quarterstaff will essentially rank those up for you. So it seems like it could be pretty handy, both in terms of like really specializing as a fire mage or an ice mage or what have you, and also freeing up some ability points that you can put into other things like two-handed weapon proficiency or increased health or whatever it is that you want. You want to have a magical bear at your side. Have fun with that, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, it seems like pretty fun build, and that's what I'm going to get into. I'm currently trying to decide whether I want to be a fire mage or an ice mage in my New Game Plus mode. I'm going to play as an Amaoan, possibly with crystals growing out of his skull. I really love the new character creation options. I've goofed around with it a little. I agree with one person on Reddit who said that crystals just look really natural on the dwarven characters. 100% agree. Looks very on point. So we'll see. The part of me wants to make an Orlin, but I just know I'm going to go with an Amaoan. I love the way the Amaoans look, and I'm fascinated with them as a creature and their physiology in this world. And I want to be a big, beefy fish boy that punches people with a stick that can also shoot fire and ice at them. But anyways, yeah, if you liked today's episode, send me an email, worldofeora@gmail.com, or follow me on Twitter @worldofeora, or do both. Those are both good options. As well, if you want to support the show directly, you can do so at ko-fi.com/worldofeora. If that's not something that you can do, I fully understand and I do not have any expectations for it. It is just there for people who want to support things that they enjoy consuming online, and I generally appreciate it. Thank you so much for anybody who has given support. I very much appreciate it, and feel free to send me a message anytime and talk about things that you want in the direction for this show to go as we continue moving forward. If you want to support the show, but you don't want to do so financially, totally understand. There's another way that you can help, and that is by engaging with the platform that you're on. This is not a click, like, and subscribe thing. This is simply a leave a review, leave a comment, you rate it whatever stars you think it deserves a rating for, and that really helps the show out. But more than anything else, just reach out to me, have a conversation, or let other people know. It helps the show get around, and then more people hear it, and they can help support the show. As for what I have been playing lately, besides obviously the Avowed update, I have been doing some writing for a rather decent adventure, a point crawl for the game of Cairn, and I uploaded it onto the Cairn Discord and got some pretty positive feedback from people. Actually, no, multiple Discords. It wasn't Cairn that responded, but I posted it for feedback, and a number of people said promising things about it. So I'm hoping to develop my skills as an adventure writer for tabletop games. And I really would like to write some adventures, especially within the setting of Eora, for some of these game systems that I'm really getting into that are outside of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Not that I have anything wrong with D&D 5e. Love D&D 5e. That's how I started out with that kind of stuff. But I'm really getting into a lot of these OSR type of games, and also into kind of other spaces in between, powered by the apocalypse and other just specifically crafted systems for certain games. I'm very much interested in how I can put Eora into some of these systems, or even just getting into these game systems in the first place. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, and hopefully that's something I can do in the future. And if it interests any of you, please reach out, let me know what you think, or if you want to work on something together. Thanks everyone for listening to today's episodes about how magic goes through implements to make the magical implements, how magic works within this world, what it means that the quarterstaff is a regular mundane magical implement in the game of Avowed, what it could mean for the future of the world of Eora in a fictional fantasy sense, and whether or not we can see that in the future going forward. Thanks everyone for listening. I've been your host, Eric, aka Gingerino, and I'll see you guys next time.